I've really been a bringing home the bacon council member.
You know, it's about getting the nuts and bolts of government done.
Andrew Lewis is seeking a second term on the Seattle City Council.
Hello, hi.
He's facing challenger Bob Kettle, a retired naval officer who's impatient for results.
It's just gotten worse.
Yeah.
Seattle's District 7 includes downtown, Interbay, East Magnolia, and Queen Anne, neighborhoods with some unique problems. Will voters grant Andrew Lewis 4 more years or favor political newcomer Bob Kettle?
There's no bigger public health crisis that's facing the city of Seattle than fentanyl.
The candidates face off.
We cannot succeed in public safety if we don't also succeed in public health.
The battle to represent downtown and the rest of District 7 on the Seattle City Council. Next on City Inside Out. Welcome to this edition of City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callahan. The race for Seattle City Council District 7 pits incumbent Andrew Lewis against retired naval officer Bob Kettle. Lewis won the primary in August, but was the only incumbent of the 3 running who earned less than 50% of the vote. Kettle says D7 needs a new leader with stronger policies on public safety. But Lewis says he's delivered in his first term on several top priorities, including a new 911 alternative response program. And that's just part of the debate in the battle for District 7.
Good morning, everybody.
Incumbent Andrew Lewis
Thank you for your support.
and former naval officer Bob Kettle are facing off in the race for Seattle City Council District 7, from downtown to Interbay and Queen Anne to southeast Magnolia.
We have a lot of work that we've started in the first term that I want to see to completion.
I really think that we need new leadership.
Lewis earned 43% of the vote to win the 6-candidate August primary and is endorsed by the stranger. He says responding to every emergency is his top priority.
Whether that be a Seattle police officer, whether that be a mental health clinician through our new 911 alternative response pilot that's launching in October, we need to make sure that that is first and foremost the work in front of the city.
Kettle won 32% of the primary vote and is endorsed by the Seattle Times. His top issue? Hiring more police to take on crime.
Because that really makes the difference in terms of changing the environment, undoing that permissive environment that's been created by the current city council.
Kettle has also criticized Lewis for his vote that led to a 3-month delay in the passage of a new city law on drug possession and public drug use.
We lost 105 days. 105 days where more people were dying on the streets from fentanyl because we didn't take action on June 6th.
Lewis says his vote led to a better ordinance with broader political support that will have a bigger impact on Seattle's drug crisis.
The time that we have spent over the summer putting those resources in place was time well spent.
Lewis touts his work on new funding for the Queen Anne Community Center, the reopening of the Cinerama, and the launch of a 911 alternative response program.
I have a proven track record of being able to get investments into District 7.
Kettle points to his experience as an officer in the Navy and a community council leader with a better understanding of the many different people of D7.
And bringing that neighborhood perspective to City Hall, to the City Council, will really change that direction for us.
For D7 voters, it's either an incumbent who says he's been an effective progressive leader, or a political newcomer who says the council has failed the test of the last 4 years.
I'm well positioned to be in a significant position of leadership for the people of District 7 in the next term.
And unfortunately, the character of the current City Council and, dare I say it, the incumbent has been lacking.
And here they are, the 2 candidates running for District 7 on Seattle City Council. City Council member Andrew Lewis, good to have you here, and Bob Kettle, his challenger. We had a coin flip before the show, and Bob, you're going to be speaking first. Tell us why you're running, and please keep it to a minute.
Well, by way of introduction, yes, Bob Kettle. I'm a retired naval officer with a career in naval intelligence, and over the past decade, I've been a grad student at UW's Evans School, a civic volunteer, community leader, and most importantly, became a dad. I like to point out to folks, too, that I'm not born and raised here, but I did choose Seattle twice while in the Navy, and choosing it for a 3rd time now because I believe in Seattle. And the question, why am I running? I'm running because of my concerns over the failures of the current City Council to address the issues that we're facing as a city, public safety, public health, and homelessness. By contrast, I'm looking to bring leadership with a North Star, leadership with accountability and transparency, and really a big focus on good governance. We need to have that listening to all stakeholders, positive engagement, and really focusing on the nuts and bolts of local government. And so looking to bring new leadership, not followership, and focusing on compassion, and also wisdom.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councilmember Lewis, an opening statement, if you could, and please keep it to a minute.
Brian, thank you. It's really good to be here. I'm Andrew Lewis, Seattle City Council member for District 7, running for re-election. Really excited by a lot of the things we've been able to move forward over the past 4 years, and really looking forward now with the new experience of being a recent father and having a 10-month-old daughter with my wife Laura, really building a city that is for the future of the people coming up, like making sure that people like my daughter will be able to aspire to home ownership, making sure that she lives in a community that's clean, safe, and open, and that we have public amenities that speak to what we all value as the Seattleites. I'm really proud in my first term of being able to build coalitions to get big things done. Biggest renovation since 1950 of the Queen Anne Community Center. Saving the Cinerama and getting it into nonprofit ownership to reopen hopefully this fall. Working with my colleagues to pass a legacy building new investment plan in the Metropolitan Park District, and working with Mayor Harrell to finally create a 911 alternative response through the care department. And I want to build on that work in the next 4 years, and that's why I'm running for re-election.
Thank you very much for that. Bob, I'm going to go to you next and break apart some of these public safety issues. You raised some concerns with me when we talked a few weeks ago about your opponent's recent vote on Seattle's new drug possession and public drug use ordinance. I want you to speak to that issue, and if you could, what differentiates you from Councilmember Lewis when it comes to public safety?
Well, it's a focus on the fundamentals. And it starts before that. It starts with the defund piece. The defund vote that was taking the selfie at the CHOP, that really created what I call permissive environment. And the permissive environment is this piece that threads along, and what allows the criminal set to take its actions and cause the public safety challenges that we're facing today. And you asked about the public drug use and possession law. The flip-flop in June on that bill, which I would have been a co-sponsor and not just voted for, really kind of furthered that idea that we don't have municipal city code lined up with state law, and it gives that that furthering of that environment for the criminal set, but also for the that random acts of violence piece. That kind of creates this environment where that could be okay because they feel that they're not going to be held to account because we've lost so many officers, so many police officers over the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I want to make sure, Councilmember Lewis, you respond to something that Bob has said here.
Yeah, well, there's no bigger public health crisis that's facing the city of Seattle than fentanyl. And we need to have a serious and mature response to that crisis, which is why we don't just need a statute, we need a plan. Working closely with Mayor Harrell, with public health experts, with people in local law enforcement, we built a comprehensive plan not just to pass a statute, but to actually respond with a sense of urgency to people who are publicly using drugs, people who are in the throes of addiction and who need help and services. Relative to the plan that the council considered in June, which was very strongly opposed by public health experts, including a number of physicians at the University of Washington School of Medicine, we worked together to pair the adoption of a public use misdemeanor statute with interventions like a post-overdose recovery center, with interventions like having a promulgated guidance to officers around how to triage people who are in need of getting diverted treatment versus people that we might have to hold accountable in the criminal legal system. Making sure that we are working on building a broader coalition that recognizes the legitimacy of that approach, like the Public Defender Association, and bringing some of those voices to the table to craft the policy. Led to a 6-vote supermajority of passage, support of Mayor Harrell, support of Chief Diaz. We have a plan that we're going to move forward on with fentanyl in Seattle.
Got it. Bob, you raised a hand there. What do you want to bring up?
I just wanted to note that the June 6th bill would have been in state law, and when the mayor came out with his bill, first thing he said was he acknowledged that state law already had provisions for police officers to refer for assessment and services. So the things that we're talking about were already in that first bill. And the mayor's bill also noted that the public drug use, fentanyl, for example, is a clear public threat to public safety and public health. Okay. And that's an important piece. And so yes, then the council came in, the amendments, and then when we start talking about articulable facts, that creates some confusion, and what's really needed is clarity, and that's my concern.
A quick rejoinder there, if you could.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of clarity. The chief of police supports this bill. The Seattle Police Officers Guild even supported this bill. It was also supported across the aisle by folks like Councilmember Herbold, the public safety chair, and folks like Lisa Dugard of the Public Defender Association. Okay. It's a workable standard. Our police officers are professionals, and they can take the guidance that's being promulgated by the mayor and the police chief. I know as a former prosecutor that these rules are clear and provide guidance that officers will be familiar with through their training experience. Okay. And working together, we can move forward on this, and we have a plan, and we're going to get the work done.
Thank you. Bob, I see your hand quickly, if you could.
Is I'm thankful that Councilmember Alex Peterson put his amendment into in terms of having these relook opportunities to make sure that it's doing what it needs to do.
Fair. We'll see what happens with this ordinance as it moves forward. But Councilmember Lewis, I want to make sure that I talk with you about 911 alternatives. Civilian mental health workers responding to person down calls, for example. Seattle's starting a pilot program with this approach this fall. You've highlighted this in your campaign. Your opponent has not. Tell us about 911 alternatives and why they're important.
Thank you, Brian. So nationally, coming out of COVID, we've seen significant hiring difficulties at police departments all across the country. Our department is down, but departments are down from Fort Worth, Texas, to Dallas, to St. Louis, to San Diego. Thurston County was in the news a couple weeks ago for this. What a lot of jurisdictions are doing is not only working to focus on hiring and retention of officers, which we've been doing. We're up to 200 applications a month, biggest number in 2 years for police officers, but also diversifying that first response, making sure that for certain calls that don't require a gun and a badge, we are sending a mental health clinician, or we are sending an EMT, or we are sending some other professional who is trained in public health and de-escalation. A similar program in Denver, Colorado resulted in a 34% decrease of criminal activity and disorder in the focus area for their pilot. We're running a similar program here where we're going to send behavioral mental health clinicians to respond to calls for service for people who are in some kind of behavioral distress, be it substance abuse or behavioral mental health. This is going to free up police officers to respond to things only they can respond to. It's also going to provide a more appropriate type of responder for those kinds of calls for service. It hits the ground this month.
Yeah, in October.
Really looking forward to getting that done. And in my next term, I want to scale this service to the entire city.
Bob, I want to have you talk about what the council member is saying about 911 alternatives and your thoughts about this.
I definitely support it. Two things I will say. We cannot succeed in public safety if we don't also succeed in public health. And public health goes to this. We need to build the capacity. We need to do it as a city. We need to partner with the county and the state because the state's responsible for mental health and the county's public health, so we can't do it alone. But I'm also thinking that I need to note that, on my 8 years of the Queen Anne Community Council, where I stood up and chaired the public safety, I've heard over the last 4 years so many times, like the Cahoots program, but where are we now? So we've had all this talk, but again, where are we now? What does the care department have in terms of alternate responses? Very little, despite all the talk over the last 4 years. And that's a challenge, and that's really cost our city, this inability to get things done. And that goes largely to the overall council not being able to work together. So we have an opportunity with this election to create a new council that will work together to actually get these programs online quicker, so then the people on the streets and others are helped.
Okay. I want to, if I could, move on to another topic here.
Actually, Brian, I want to respond just really briefly to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that my opponent has a fundamental misunderstanding of what the hindrance has been in setting up the alternative response. The council has actually been pretty unanimous over the course of the last 4 years in supporting a response of this kind. The challenge was there was not significant enthusiasm from the Durkin administration for this. A partner came along in Mayor Harrell. Mayor Harrell has been very dedicated to this work, worked closely with the council majority to get this stood up. It's a complicated endeavor. We're getting it done, but it has nothing to do with dynamics on the council. It had to do with dynamics between the council and the mayor. We have a new mayor who's a good partner. We're getting that work done.
Quick rejoinder,
I would say it's about leadership that's been missing on the council, and I would say with the incumbent for District 7, it's the kind of same thing you hear in the Seattle Times, like, oh, we're going to have tiny homes, and then we don't. We're going to have alternative responses, and then we don't. So I understand there's complications and complexities, but still it's about leadership and getting it done.
Fair. I want to make sure that I move on to another piece, and maybe tiny homes will work its way into this. Let's talk about homelessness. The city data shows District 7 has more unauthorized campsites and RVs than just about any other district in the city. How would you approach this problem differently than what the council's doing now, Bob?
we need to incorporate the lessons learned. I remember, again, back on the Queen Anne Community Council when Mayor Murray came to, his team came to the Queen Anne Council and gave a briefing on it. And I was astounded because the planning was poor. I was like, this is not going to work. The span of control, there was issues with it from there. And then we kind of seen the same thing with the King County side with the KCRA. And so we have to have, this ability to learn from what's happened in the past number of years and then build it forward. And one of the things I like, and I use as an example, is the Lehigh project and regarding bringing RVs and tiny homes together.
Low Income Housing Institute. Keep going.
Yes, and it's about that. It's about coming in and having, structure. It has a perimeter fencing, has a gate guard. It has on-site counseling, rules regarding the common areas. And what it does is it allows this chance for those folks in RVs to then move forward and then go into a tiny home. And this progression is going to make them more successful as they look to integrate with society and to that next housing option. So these are the kind of things that we need to do, is build on the lessons learned of the failures of the last number of years, essentially since 15.
Councilmember Lewis, your response to what Bob's saying about homelessness and your approach here.
I mean, I'm just really glad that Bob supports the RV Safe Latin Tiny House Village that I helped fund and get site security for Low Income Housing Institute. I mean, what I would say to that is, I actually don't know, Brian, if those statistics are up to date on encampments in District 7 being the district that has the most, because we've been doing a lot of work over the past year with the Unified Care Team, a new team that the City Council and Mayor Harrell have built to be a one-stop, no-excuses shop to go and do outreach and remediate encampment locations. 43% reduction in encampments citywide, 35% reduction in RV encampments, and it's visible. I mean, you can see it, but you can also see that we still have the majority of those RV encampments. We still have the majority of those homeless encampments. But it starts by centering, gathering that data to map where all the encampments are, and then having a team that has all the resources integrated in one place instead of having lots of redundant teams. It's made it more efficient. It's made it easier for me as a district council member to work with our assigned Unified Care Team liaison to identify priority areas. And we've worked with Mayor Harrell to expand things like tiny house villages so that we can make meaningful offers of shelter to folks in those encampments, clear the encampment, remediate the location. That is the proven way that we make progress on the encampments, and that is what I'm going to continue to advocate for and work on as a city council member.
Briefly, Bob.
Briefly, I'd just like to add, too, because it's important to have good relationship with the neighborhoods, and I would look to have good neighbor agreements because they can come in and support and also highlight things like, with the one we were just talking about, there's a preschool right around the corner. So we need to work with them so they have contingency plans. There's bus stops. We need to be mindful of those things. So I definitely support the concept, and it's just each location you have to take into account what's happening around it. And that's where having a good neighbor agreement, where the local community council, whatever the organization may be, is a step forward.
Thank you for that. I want to move on, if I could, and ask you, Councilmember Lewis, a question about housing. So the council recently approved an upzone on 3rd Avenue. The idea is to encourage more development in this neighborhood and add a lot more residential units. I want to talk about this and maybe the overall plan to revitalize downtown. If you could sneak in a little bit about the need for more housing, too, that'd be great.
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much. So downtown is going to have to evolve. We're not going to be restoring the pre-COVID status quo for downtown. That is not something that's in the cards. Downtowns internationally have shown us that that is the case. What is before us is looking at how downtowns as a center of culture, of innovation, and of commerce in a metropolitan region, what they are going to look like in a world where return to work is not quite what it was pre-COVID. So return to office was not quite what it was. That means you need to figure out a way to replace a lot of folks who are daily commuters to the downtown core. We had nearly 400,000 daily people from other parts of the state that were coming into downtown pre-COVID, and they were patronizing businesses and retail and restaurants. We're not going to have that again. No downtown is going to have that again from commuters, but we could from residents. And that's what comes to this, where it comes to this upzone, is on the core of 3rd Avenue. We made a planning decision a long time ago that was only going to be, for the most part, retail and restaurants. What we are doing as a city is making a conscious choice saying, we're going to have more housing density in the center of our downtown so that we have more residents who are providing foot traffic. People on the street in criminology are the informal guardians of our public spaces. The more people that we have in the downtown core, the safer downtown is going to be, the more activated it's going to be, the more demand for reopening our storefronts. This is how we're going to bring downtown back. By conferring that new value and that new potential on those parcels on 3rd Avenue, we can enter into development agreements to change the streetscape on 3rd Avenue. 3rd Avenue is going to physically change. It's also going to demographically change by having a lot more residents who live there.
Thank you. Bob, I want to talk to you about some ideas about downtown revitalization. Councilmember Lewis mentioned the numbers of workers not coming back to the job en masse as they did before the pandemic. Talk to us about revitalizing downtown. If you could touch on some housing, too, that'd be great.
Yes, and obviously with the pandemic, the pendulum swung so far over. It's coming back, and I'd argue it'd probably come back a little bit more, and so it's still settling out. But clearly, we have to have more residents downtown. We're going to have transitions from office buildings to residential buildings, and I support that. And really, downtown also needs to have a voice. As you know, I mentioned the Queen Anne Community Council. These neighborhoods have voices, but so does downtown. They need a voice, and along with the rest of District 7. Interesting, too, on this, as I've been downtown, is that we need to be smart as a city. Again, it's good governance is about taking care of the nuts and bolts of local government. So as we move forward, we have to think, for example, logistics. One of the things I've been hearing on the street is the inability for the businesses, the restaurants, the retail, whatever it is, in order to do logistics, have their trucks be able to come in and out properly. And so we need to be mindful as we build these new buildings to have, like in the Newmark building where a Target is, proper loading docks. 2 words, loading docks, very important for logistics, because we need to think it now, because what we can't have is a quick rush, build up buildings, and the next thing you know it, 10, 20 years from now, we're like lamenting all the logistic challenges that we have. We need to think about these things ahead of time.
Thank you. I'd like to move on, if I could, to how the city pays for all of its different programs when it comes to redevelopment, et cetera. There's a debate right now underway within the City Council about budgeting, and I want to make sure I bring this up. Due to declining revenues, the city faces about a $250 million deficit in 2025, almost $500 million in 2026. Is the answer increasing Seattle's jumpstart payroll tax on bigger companies like Amazon? Bob, I want to throw it out there. What do you think?
First, I kind of reject the premise. The city has the money. I spoke to, I got endorsed by Councilmember Alex Peterson, and, part of the piece with that was fiscal responsibility. And I spoke with him, and he highlighted that the issue is not a deficit so much as the structure of the budget and where the money is and the restrictions on those monies and how that plays out in terms of each year as it goes forward. So the question really is, do we have a deficit problem, which I would say no, but more of a budget problem? For two reasons. One is, A, are the programs that we're paying now really accomplishing their mission, and should we be spending money on those programs? Two is the structure of the budget, these silos that, there's these walls that exist in the budget process. A, do they need to be there? And if they don't, then hey, then we can transfer this money to the general budget. And then all of a sudden, there's no deficit.
Okay. Your thoughts about this, Councilmember Lewis?
Yeah, there's definitely a big challenge we need to solve for the next biennium in making sure that the city can pay its bills, keep the lights on, keep our workers paid. What we really need to be looking at first and foremost before there's any conversation of new taxes is what are we doing to restructure and reform the way city government fundamentally works. There are lots of departments that have overlapping mission and respond to similar requests for proposals or grant making, like a lot of departments that, they don't necessarily do direct services, but they do grant making.
Right.
But all those departments have their own directors, their own human resources, their own support sector. Looking at ways that we can consolidate departments, I think, is a really important part of how we can do a restructure. We also need to look at how we can realize attritional savings through the closing and consolidations of certain pockets within these departments of work that these departments do. Strategies like this are how the City Council saved $60 million in the last biennium. We can build on that work. We can do more of that. We also do need to look at making some of the support from the Jumpstart tax in particular for the general fund. Those have been temporary transfers in the last couple of budgets. We do need to make a portion of that permanent to support this work, but only after exhausting all of these measures should we have a discussion about any kind of new revenue.
Briefly.
Just building on that, outdoor belling, I'm talking to a developer, a nonprofit developer, and she's talking about a project that's been stalled. It's over 200 units, and she's like, the stalling has created, changing this from an affordable housing to market essentially. And what she's talking about was the working of SDCI and City Light and so forth together. So it's almost like we need a Just Cares project to help these projects move along. If we brought Just Cares to this area of government, we can actually make affordable housing affordable as opposed to having delays, which then make it unaffordable.
Thank you. We need to start getting towards the end here, but I did want to see, is there an issue that you could cover in 30 seconds, I hope, that might be one that's not in the headlines we've talked about here? Bob, might I start with you?
I'm always hearing, again, back on canvassing and door knocking, is public safety and homelessness.
Okay.
First. But I do hear about transportation, for example. There's a lot of transportation issues. District 7, we have 6 bridges just in Interbay that we have to be mindful of, never mind Ballard and Aurora Bridge. But I like to say as well that it's important that part of the campaign is this idea of building community. And tenets of this include like the libraries. We need to support the libraries because they're community centers too. And you know, the arts, as we talked about at the Inspire Washington event.
Yeah.
Very important.
Thank you for that. Briefly, if you could.
Yeah, I think one thing that's not really talked a lot about of the accomplishments of the current council and working with Mayor Harrell is the work that we did generally on the Metropolitan Park District. The investments that are in the 6-year cycle are going to be significant and make a really big difference in the community. And I think it partly hasn't gotten a lot of coverage because nothing went by the wayside in putting that together. You know, we navigated it to an 8-1 vote. Broad support from business and from the community, but it's going to open up all of the bathrooms in our parks to be year-round. We're going to weatherize a lot of those bathrooms. We're going to increase our park rangers from 2 to 28 to make sure that rules are enforced in our parks. And it's going to make a big difference to make sure our parks are clean, safe, and open, and it's something that we can all be proud of as Seattleites.
Thank you. We need to wrap up. I want to talk about a few things here with you, Bob, as we do. Your campaign has raised $179,000 as of early October. I want you to talk about who's supporting you, maybe the top 3 endorsers, if you could, and just a last message you want voters to know about.
We're capped out, so we're at the cap right now.
Got it.
So that's first, number one. And in terms of endorsements, obviously Seattle Times, huge. Also on the labor side, Local 27, the firefighters, and we just had IBEW 77, electrical workers endorse us. And then going with that is the triple play of endorsements coming from Councilmember Sarah Nelson first, then Council President Deborah Juarez, and then Councilmember Alex Peterson. Those 3 really make a statement.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And just to finish up here, you get the last word. If you could talk about your endorsements as well. Your campaign has raised just over $164,000. Talk to us about that and who's supporting you, your top 3.
Brian, thank you. It's been really good to be here today. I'm really, really honored to have the endorsement of my friend, Attorney General Bob Ferguson, who's been a great public safety leader and a great leader here in Washington. Really, really proud to be endorsed by the Martin Luther King Labor Council as someone with a long history of being in labor unions and fighting for working people. And you know, it's really great to be endorsed by my home legislative district and in the 36th District Democrats and be the only candidate endorsed by Democratic Party organizations in this race. And I'm going to continue to bring that coalition together with unlikely allies like not an endorsement, but being rated as strongly aligned by the Downtown Seattle Association. That's the kind of coalition you bring together to get big things done, and I'm going to continue to get big things done for the people of District 7.
Thank you both for joining me here, and we will be right back. What are people saying online about the 2 candidates for Seattle City Council District 7? One person writes, I see Andrew Lewis out downtown, walking, biking, supporting local business more than anyone else in Seattle politics. Another person comments, Bob Kettle has the intelligence and understanding and backbone to represent the entire district. We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org or find us on social media. Coming up next week, the race to replace Alex Peterson in Seattle City Council District 4. 2 attorneys, tech consultant Ron Davis and City Hall veteran Maritza Rivera, face off on the next City Inside Out. I hope you join us.